I wanted to spend one more BBC sharing my experience of participating in the Veterans for Peace Convention in Spokane this past weekend. The Abbey was requested to lead some meditations and join a sharing circle there. So Venerable Santa and I spent the weekend participating. And it's just, I have to say, it's just continually, the impression is still so strong in my mind that I wanted to share some of the reasons why. The choice of workshops that they had at this convention really gave me a sense of what our veterans and their families' main concerns are, and how they, as a community, and many ways as a culture, are needing to address and sort of figure out how to proceed with some of the things that come up for our veterans over the decades. So there were many, many workshops, and I'm going to leave this little handbook on the back table. Feel free to peruse it. It's got some wonderful things in it. But I did want to share two other workshops besides the two that I saw, which was the Pentagon's militarization of the climate crisis, and then also PTSD and moral injury, how to really deal with healing once they get back home. So the one here, it was called Woke and Empowered for Life, the Long Haul View of GI Resistance. And what this was about, I'm going to read some of the summary here, is to highlight the immense power of simple, courageous acts of conscience performed both in and out of uniform with some of the GI resistors of the past and the present, telling their stories, an act of resistance initiated from a place of truth, a place of compassion, and passion for justice that can be transformative, that has altered the course of their life for good or for bad. And that they were, a number of them just told their stories on what was the impetus for their original resistance and what has sustained them over the decades. Because some of these folks have been in the peace movement for 40, 50 years now. So that was one of the workshops. And then the other one, which I had such a hard time deciding, I wanted to just engage in everything. This one sounds so powerful. It's called War Comes Home, Supporting Veterans and Society in the Transition from Violence to Nonviolence. And it says that the problems of veterans are the problems of our society. Suicide, mass incarceration, homelessness, addiction, and deportation aren't unique to veterans alone. What is unique is that veterans have been trained to commit, support, and direct extreme violence in order to achieve a political objective. So military veterans thus have a higher propensity for violence, elevating them to a higher level of risk for entanglement with the criminal justice system. A lot of them are incarcerated, have been. So the main question was really, how are they really coming home? And what kind of society are we offering them to reintegrate into? With the extreme gun violence in our country, with the militarization of even our borders, are we offering them some sanctuary? Are we offering them some reprieve? Or are they just meeting at home the same issues that they're trying to heal from? So those were two of them that I really felt very wished I, just very called to share. And then as the day ended, I was part of the plenary session called Sacred Lands, Sacred Lives, Weaving Our Visions. What do we envision for the future of our human family and our earth? So they invited 12 of us into an inner circle, then had concentric circles around it with the rest of some of the participants to share what we see as a source of inspiration for the earth and for the forces of peace. It was a really beautiful circle because there was, except for one Spokane tribal member who was a man with his young son, which was why he stood into that circle, was to really be there for his son. There were 12 women in the circle. It was very powerful to hear the women's voices. There was a few women veterans in the group. There were a lot of spouses of vets, but I don't know what the percentage is of women vets. I know they're trying to increase that number in the chapters. But to see interconnectedness, courage, hope, how a lot of our young adult women are taking on the banner of leadership in environmental and peace activism. There's a young Spokane councilwoman, she can't be more than 29, 30, who represents one of the poor neighborhoods that's very diverse in Spokane, and she's really becoming a very strong advocate for the homeless. There was a retired Army major who has this call to build these peace poles. They're these white obelisks that have may peace. May there be peace on earth and let it begin with me, with all different languages. And she envisions having one of these 7-foot poles on every school campus that is accompanied by a peacekeeping curriculum that she wants to hold as her vision to help the scourge of school violence in our country. There were a number of women who were directors of organizations here in Spokane. So 350 was there, peacekeepers, Peace and Justice Action League, all led by or directed by women. Each defining her vision as a counterforce to the greed, the power, the violence, the environmental degradation, and the militarism that's certainly starting to happen in our country. And so I spoke about how to work with our own inner ecologies so that we're really clear about what our motivation is as to why we're doing what we're doing, and to be vigilant about any type of disturbing, struggling mental states that could really sabotage our really good work in the world. So to bring it back to, it's got to start here, because we're going to be modeling a lot of this for the world, and how we want that to unfold, the compassion, the wisdom. And then I sang the Star Spangled Compassion, which I heard this vet in the back row go, "Right on, sister!" So it was well received. And then there was a lovely serpentine walking meditation at the end. So here's my lasting impression. This is the only time I've ever met the Vets for Peace. I'm just so on board with them. I'm just over the top. So one of the words I heard a lot in the conference with the community of vets was for them to have trust in each other. The word vulnerability came up a lot. To expose their deepest feelings. They have these 120 chapters in the country around the world, and these are places for these vets to open up their hearts, to really work through a lot of what they've experienced. So here you have decades or years after you've left the military, carrying all of these experiences, having been convinced perhaps in the beginning that it was a very noble cause, that you were participating in peace and security for all. If you were a Vietnam vet, chances are you were probably drafted, but you tried to get on board with the whole idea. But as time goes on, many of them began to see cracks in how war brings peace story. It just wasn't fitting. You could see that war wasn't working as you see the growth of casualties. The majority, overwhelming majority of them being civilians, innocent lives. You get to see a lot of killing, a lot of dying, and it stops making sense. Like, how does this work on getting to peace? And a military system that over time is becoming less and less truthful on the real reason why you're fighting. So a lot of these vets said they started seeing the money aspect, the profit making, the power, grabbing, the displacement of people, the cover-ups, the secrecy. And so you come home with this huge ache in your heart. Like, there's something not right. I can't let this go. So they return to their lives to try to be normal again. But you can't, because you keep trying to heal this body and this mind that's got this discordant thing going on. And all these images and feelings continue to rise. We're talking decades here, especially the Vietnam vets. And you watch your government and the military continue to fuel this war machine in deceptive, dishonorable, and greedy ways. So there's this huge conflict, this huge trauma, this huge discordance. So these men and women deciding, rather than just to go hide, go heal, go just back away, I'm out of it, while they're trying to heal themselves, they feel very compelled to voice the truth that they have begun to deeply understand. And there's a quote in this handbook that really says it all. It's by Martin Luther King. A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual doom. And that's kind of where we are right now. And they know that like we don't know that. And so they step right into the thick of things. Some of them have been at the front lines of the peace movement for decades, standing with the veterans who are serving our country that are now getting deported, standing with those seeking justice for the missing and murdered Indigenous women of Alaska, for the militarization of our borders, the sexual harassment and abuse in our military. 78% of enlisted women and 50% of enlisted men counter some sort of sexual harassment in the military. That's the number. So you're not going there to, to connect. Support the Vietnam French village. Stand against the privatization of the VA. There are 9 million vets who are quite happy with the VA and what it has supplied. It wants to see more funding. And President Trump and the Koch brothers want to privatize this, which means money for the investors, no money for the vets. So they are fighting this like all out. They stand for the disinvestment from companies that put money into war. They've got another whole concern there. So they're right up there. They've seen things that we haven't. They've lived something most of us will never live. That's changed their hearts and their minds forever. So with a deep conviction that only peace can heal the world and stop war and violence, they know that it starts from healing themselves, then healing each other, while they're doing this, trying to heal the world. So this is so in line with Dharma, what was really nice about it, there wasn't any kind of theistic overtone in it, there was very non-sectarian, non-theistic, it was just hope and compassion and love and friendship. Their hearts compelled to speak the truth and to stand for it, which is really what we try to do with the Dharma, is to be able to transform our own minds and then to be able to manifest and embody that in the world. So I'm totally in support of the vision, and I'm inspired to continue to do my own practice and to be able to speak my own truth as I understand the Buddhist teachings, that I know that in whatever way that can help heal the world. But I'm really very much in support of what they're doing.